Hi, I'm Dr. Laurie Hess, and today I'm here with my bird Dale, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about a common question that I'm asked every day in my animal hospital by many bird owners, which is, why does my bird scream? That's a really common thing I hear every day, and the answer is there are many reasons why birds scream. Remember that birds are very vocal animals. In the wild, they live in flocks of hundreds to thousands of birds, and they communicate through lots of different sounds, including loud screaming sounds. And that's a socially acceptable behavior when you're out in the jungle or you're out in the wild, but it may not be a socially acceptable behavior if you're in a home, if you're in particularly a small home or a small apartment with thin walls and not bird-friendly neighbors. So what do you do if your bird is screaming? Well, if you're thinking about getting a bird, if you don't even have a bird yet, remember generally the larger the bird, the louder the sound, the louder the scream. Although there are some birds, little birds like conures, who are known to make lots and lots of noise. So if you're thinking about getting a bird, remember that you should really think about the volume and your circumstances and whether loud screaming is something that's going to bother you. There are people who are light sleepers. There are people who have young children in the house, and it's important to keep those children sleeping. So if you have a bird, birds can scream, and that's a normal behavior for some birds. Remember that birds do scream most normally and socially acceptably to them in the early morning hours, at dawn, and at dusk, because that's when they're feeding and that's when they're socializing with each other. So that is a normal behavior which you can sort of control and modulate when you have a pet bird, but you do have to accept on some level that birds are going to be loud, and you have to think about how, if you're able to tolerate that. Now, if your bird normally doesn't scream and suddenly you notice a change in behavior and your bird starts to scream a lot, that's a cause for concern. You want to make sure that there isn't an underlying medical problem or something really bothering the bird to cause that screaming. So if you do see that, you'll want to notify your veterinarian and have your bird checked out. Now, in terms of causes for screaming, yes, there are several medical problems, and again, you want to have those eliminated. You want to make sure that those are not the causes by bringing your bird to the vet. But there are this whole host of behavioral reasons for birds screaming. And a lot of times we say, oh, birds want attention. And sure, they want attention, and they'll use their voices, they'll use screams and other sounds to try to get your attention. Typically, as an owner, you are that bird's flock mate. You're that bird's partner or a friend or a social company. So birds will try to socialize with you by vocalizing. The worst thing that you can do as a bird owner is to inadvertently reinforce that behavior by going over to the bird if it's screaming and saying, stop screaming, stop screaming. I don't like when you scream, because what does that do? It just reinforces that behavior. The bird screams and immediately you go running over and you give that bird attention. And although you don't mean to reinforce that behavior, you're telling that bird, you scream and I'm going to come over and talk to you. So try really hard not to do that. If your bird starts to scream and you're holding the bird or you're with the bird, turn away. It's kind of like giving a timeout to a toddler. You don't want to reinforce that behavior, so if you can ignore it, when the bird sees that it doesn't really accomplish what he wants, which is to get more attention, he may stop doing it. On the other hand, you want to reinforce good behavior. So if your bird is sitting quietly, that's when you want to go over and you want to say good bird and interact with that bird and praise the bird for the quiet behavior. You also want to pinpoint when your bird is doing this. So if your bird screams, for example, when you're coming home, you come home after a long day, you're tired, you want to open your mail, sit on the couch, and all of a sudden your bird starts to scream. If you can see, and you note this by checking every day and maybe writing a journal, if you can see that there are patterns to your bird screaming, so your bird is screaming like when you come home every day, be prepared. Give something to your bird to do with his mouth, whether it's a toy, chewing on a toy, eating, shredding some paper, doing something with his mouth so that he can't scream. So you're preempting the behavior. The idea is to change the environment that really sets off the behavior so that you can actually eliminate the behavior or replace it with something else that is equally satisfying to your bird in accomplishing his goals of having your attention, for example. So if he gets a toy and he gets something to do and you praise him, if he's sitting there chewing on his toy or eating his food while you're opening your mail and he's quiet, then that's acceptable behavior for you, and it's also great for him because he's doing something he loves. Remember, there are lots and lots of causes for screaming, and you do want to eliminate underlying medical things, but try to work on documenting when your bird screams, seeing if there's a pattern, and talking to your veterinarian. Many veterinarians are very, very good at helping you work through behavior problems. It's a large part of what I do in my practice. And remember that there's an answer for everything. It's not a magic pill. It's not a quick fix. Working on bird behavior can take a while, and you do have to learn to work with your bird. Realize that birds aren't machines. They have moods just like we do. Sometimes they want to work on training and learn things, and sometimes they just want to ignore you, or they just want to scream and be difficult. And that's a time to walk away again, give up training. But if you work with a veterinarian, even with a behavior problem such as screaming, you can change that behavior slowly over time if you follow a simple set of steps like I've outlined and work with your veterinarian patiently.